Welcome back to the Tony Stiles Show. I am the illustrious Tony Stiles, except no substitutes. You know, I like to come off cocky because when it comes down to it, I am. On the phone with us, we have Senator Rand Paul. Rand Paul is very important in the liberty movement. In my opinion, he is a pillar of the liberty movement right now. He could get elected president. And for me, surprisingly, that's a little scary because I do have some discrepancies. There are some things that need to be answered, and I know that you're thinking the same thing I am. Let's ask him those questions, along with some questions about Syria. Senator Rand Paul is on the line with us. Senator Paul, how are you doing today?
Quite good. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. There's a lot of things we could talk about. There's a conflict in Syria. I think that's dead. Is that safe to say?
It's temporarily. I hope it won't be coming back to life, but for right now, it's on hold.
Yeah. What caused that? What makes you believe that it's on hold? I have my own theories. What are yours?
Well, you know, I think the votes weren't looking very good over here, and then when Putin jumped quickly on, I think, an inadvertent offer by Secretary Kerry to say, well, put the chemical weapons under international control, and Putin said, sure. And then Syria said, sure. They sort of called our bluff in a way, and even the Obama administration has been saying that they want a negotiated settlement. So in the end, maybe we get to that. Maybe the Russians are sincere. You know, time will tell on that. But also, it was looking like there weren't enough votes up here to go to war either.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that McConnell wanting to vote no had anything to do with it? People following his lead? Well,
you know, I think there have been a big trend over the last week or two of Republicans in the Senate deciding that there wasn't an American interest in Syria, and yeah, I think it had an influence. I think also on the other side, the Democrats, there seemed to be a steady trickle away from the president on this.
Why are the American people, in your opinion, so dead set against this war? I know that you've mentioned numerous times on numerous programs saying 100-1, the call saying against Syria.
Yeah, and it's overwhelming. There is a war weariness, and, you know, I have a lot of GIs in my state. We have 2 bases, and so I see our young soldiers around the state. I see them in the airport. I see their parents, and they've volunteered to fight for their country, but that doesn't mean they're excited about every new civil war around the world. They go where they're told.
Who gets excited about a war? That you'd be a sick person to do that.
Yeah,
right?
And so I think there's definitely a reluctance from the American people, but even from our soldiers as well, the ones who have volunteered to fight, there's a war weariness. And so that taken together, I think really the mood of the country is to look very long and hard at this and say, is there really an American interest in Syria? And I think people see that there's probably evil on both sides of that civil war.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some questions for you that are coming through from Twitter and Facebook. One of the questions that we have on here is they said that at one point you had a quote that said, "I'm not advocating everyone go out and run around with no clothes on and smoke pot. I'm not a libertarian, rather. I'm a libertarian Republican." Can you expand on that a little bit for me? Because that left a lot of people confused. And I have a very large number of libertarians that listen to my show. And there was a lot of people that asked me about this when it happened. And I said, well, you know, I'm not Rand Paul. I can't answer that question for you. But if I ever have him on, I'd be happy to ask that question. And somebody reminded me of that through social media. Can you comment on that at all for me?
Have you seen America today? Do you want Americans running around with no clothes on? Come on, Tony.
Yeah, well,
that would be what a sight that would be.
Are you stereotyping libertarians, saying that they're the type that run around naked smoking pot? I'm a libertarian. I haven't smoked pot since high school, and I don't run around naked outside my house.
Well, that we're fortunate about that. We don't want most Americans running around without their clothes on. No, what I've said is, and that I think some people sometimes mistake this,
sure,
is that some people who are for more freedom, some people think to be a libertarian is to be a libertine, that it means you have to promote a certain type of lifestyle. I've seen enough kids, and I've been around the drug culture when I was a kid enough to know that, while marijuana isn't dangerous in the sense of necessarily, you know, like an addictiveness, a chemical addiction or this or that, or makes you homicidal like Reefer Madness from the old movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, I don't think it's a great thing, and I don't want to promote it as something that, you know, hey, every American teenager go out and smoke pot because there's no harm. I think it does sap people who use it every day. I think a lot of times it saps their ambition and their ability to get up and go to work and to do things.
Well, there's research that can go either way on that, Rand. There's research that goes either way on that.
Yeah, I know, and I think
something that I wanted to ask you.
it's sort of beside the point. What I'm just trying to say is that as a father and as a legislator, I don't want it to be my job to be the public figure of people that are promoting marijuana as a good thing. That being said, I think states have the right to make a lot of the decisions with regard to either medical marijuana or even as Colorado and Washington have done on legalization. So I don't think the federal government has a role in overruling the states on this. And in fact, interestingly, in our state, we're going to use the president's new determination on not prosecuting marijuana possession. We're going to use it to start growing hemp in our state. We've
I heard that. That's good. That's fantastic. It's a great industry to have, and congratulations on pioneering that.
Yeah, we're moving forward with it.
Absolutely. Now, you would like to see less penalties, less harsh penalties for marijuana. For people that go to jail for this and things like that.
Yeah, in more general terms, I have a bill. I have a bill with Senator Leahy that would basically get rid of mandatory minimums. Mandatory minimums are federal sentences, primarily for nonviolent drug crimes, possession, that tell a judge that sometimes a kid has to go to jail for 5, 10, 15, sometimes for life in prison.
Well, what about these people that are already in prison for mandatory minimums? Right. What happens then?
That's a good question. I don't know that we can pass a law that's retroactive. Most laws have to be prospective going forward. But I think there are ways that both governors and a president can try to rectify some of that. But we have a lot of young people who have been locked up, their lives ruined. We also have people for nonviolent crimes who have gotten a felony conviction that prevents them from getting jobs, it prevents them from voting, it prevents them from owning a gun. I know of two people who, one of them grew pot plants in their closet 20 years ago in college. They still can't vote or own a gun, and every time they go to look for a job, they have to put down that they're a convicted felon. So it is doing awful things to our society, and it's disproportionately hurting African Americans.
Absolutely, and putting young people into a downward spiral like that it seems counterproductive for the country in general.
So we're trying to take at least a small step in the right direction, and that would be giving judges discretion in these cases. Right now, the discretion is taken out of the judge's hand, and mandatory sentences are handed down. There's a good group called Families Against Mandatory Minimums.
I'm familiar.
I suggest people look at their website. They've been one of the advocates in Washington for a while on this, but we're working hard, and I think we have a reasonable chance of actually passing and trying to get rid of some of these, I think, overly zealous, sentencing.
Now, your dad ran for president in 2012, and he had a good run doing so, and you went on a program and you endorsed Mitt Romney. How did that come about?
Well, when the nominating battle gets to, I think it's 2,100, when the battle gets to a certain number, that's what it takes to get the nomination. So when Romney got to that number, I discussed it with my family that I was going to go ahead and endorse the nominee. I'd said that from the beginning. I'd probably said that for 2 years, that once the nominee reached the number of delegates that it took to be the nominee, that I would endorse the nominee.
I can understand that. Is it playing politics to you to do something like that? Is it playing it safe? Because we all know full well by now you're going to take a run at the White House coming up here in a few years. It's common knowledge.
Paul,
everybody sees you all over the place. It's going to happen.
I am involved in politics, and I am a Republican. So yeah, if you call endorsing the nominee, there's very few people who have who don't endorse the nominee of their party.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It left a kind of funny taste in a lot of people's mouths. A lot of libertarian friends of mine and libertarian leaning Republicans seeing you go a different way than going with Ron Paul.
I think people really, truly, honestly, worked their butts off and really did believe in the cause that my dad put forward. He brought a lot of people into the Republican Party. And, so that, everybody has their own level and degree of when they're ready to make a commitment to a nominee. And a lot of the people didn't end up probably supporting the nominee. But I think we're winning so much of the battle. So I think rather than emphasize areas of disagreement among people who might be libertarian-leaning Republicans, really we have to understand the victories we're having. On this Syria battle, we're winning a huge victory. On NSA, we almost were able to defund the NSA in the House. This is because of libertarian Republicans, and if you want to look at all of us up here and say, oh, you're not exactly pure, you're not exactly this or that, well, who agrees with anybody 100% of the time? And we are making progress, and we need to look at how the Republican Party's coming in our direction. We win every day with public opinion, and we're gradually starting to win some of the battles in Washington. So I see nothing but positive coming from all of this.
Is there impeachable offenses that you see that Obama has committed?
You know, when you talk about impeachment, I think the bar has to be pretty high. And, you know, some people say, well, he's acted...
How do we have to push it?
Well,
that's my opinion. Of course, this is just my opinion on a show.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
The reason why I say this is that we argue all the time over what is constitutional and unconstitutional. I frankly still think Obamacare is unconstitutional. I think they tried to justify it through the Commerce Clause. It clearly wasn't. They finally gave up on that, and now they're justifying it through the tax authority. But because John Roberts voted that way, I don't want to impeach John Roberts. I think he's wrong intellectually. So sometimes a constitutional debate over what the president can do, what the president's war powers are, what congressional duties are, I think they're constitutional debates that we settle not through impeachment process, but through the courts and through elections. Now, there are times when you get to the impeachment process, but it does just have to be a high bar. And I think if we say all the time, every time we disagree with somebody,
a high bar, we had Nixon in there, and he was getting really close to going into those proceedings. And he just he was playing with the hotel room, you know, in a couple offices, things like that. We have a president that's in there, and he wiretapped the entire country, and nobody's talking.
Yeah, I don't disagree that it's a horrendous thing to collect the data on millions of phone calls, and I think it absolutely goes against everything with the Fourth Amendment. However, if you were to listen to their argument, there is some validity. The current Supreme Court in the 1970s ruled in the Miller case and also in Smith versus Maryland that third-party records don't have any Fourth Amendment protections. Now, I adamantly and viscerally disagree with those decisions. They need to be reversed. And so I'm trying to fight the NSA rulings that say you can collect 1 million phone calls a day or 1 billion bits of data a day and that the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply. I am working with the ACLU, Electronic Freedom Foundation, and others to take this all the way to the Supreme Court because I think the Fourth Amendment does apply to third-party records, needs to apply to fourth-party records, but it's not like I can say, oh, well, I'm going to impeach the president because the Supreme Court actually agrees with the president, current precedent does. I just think they're wrong and have been wrongly decided.
Absolutely. Rand Paul, thank you very much for being with us. God bless, and thank you for what you're doing for this country. I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Thanks, Tony.
Rand Paul, very interesting stuff that he has to say, you know, and I can't help it. I'm still a little unsatisfied, and I'm going to discuss a little bit about what I'm unsatisfied with you after the break. When it comes down to it, I can't think for any certain reason, for any discernible reason, why anybody would think that all libertarians would run around naked smoking pot. You know, it's about... And it's not just libertarians, it's anarchists, anarcho-capitalists. There's a lot of different ways that you can believe. And I don't believe in labels is something that I don't believe in. Labeling someone libertarian so they must do this thing is wrong in my opinion. Labeling a Republican because they do this thing is wrong in my opinion. We are all individual people, and having labels is pretty much stupidity. When we come back, I'm going to have my response to the Rand Paul interview. Stick around. You're listening to The Tony Stiles Show.